welcome back to the channel. Wanted to ask you a simple question that I kind of teased in my God of War discussion. Do Sony AAA exclusive feel too similar to you? Well, I want to ask that because today we're going to look at some of the recent releases like Horizon Forbidden West, the new God of War, and Last of Us Part 1. And yes, I understand that Last of Us Part 1 was a 2013 game, but due to the remaster coming out 2022 and this year not having a ton of Sony AAA exclusives to kind of choose from, I wanted to kind of dive into that one. So, to begin, all these games are all third person. They have action and adventure. While Last of Us Part 1 is more linear, it still does have some set pieces and action that you could see in God of War and Horizon. Now, Horizon and God of War are very close due to the combat style they have, while Last of Us has the story elements and the dad simulator that God of War does. But I'm not going to talk about that because I think that's a really cheap shot at those games. But I want you to remember that Last of Us Part 2 was a still linear game, but had these open world kind of map pieces that you could explore. And I wanted to say that one of my complaints with God of War was the puzzles in the game. Not because they were too difficult, but they just felt like they were out of a Naughty Dog game or out of Horizon. And I'm playing God of War. I don't really want to play that type of game. I'm there to fight, have some good story elements, and yeah, do some puzzles that are like not that hard. Like they're just there to continue the story or maybe load the level. But these games are, like I said, very similar, but why are these games held as perfect AAA experiences? Well, I'll tell you. Storytelling. These games craft elegant, intricate, and expanding stories that don't feel like they're overstaying their welcome, don't feel at all like they're not believable. Like, it's really hard to trick people into thinking, oh yeah, they're robot dinosaurs killing people. Yeah, that's real. Or, oh yeah, there's this God of War who have killed his people's gods, trying to bury his dead or spread the ashes of his dead wife. Yeah, okay. But these games have just great narratives that keep you pulled in, and they want to keep you there, and you can feel the heart and soul in these games. Like Horizon Zero Dawn, it's an open world game, but the storytelling, every line in that game, even from side characters, feels like they wrote that to be part of the main story. It doesn't feel like a side story. It feels like it's a main story. And then God of War Ragnarok, with the side characters and the side quests you do, you really feel like those were written for importance, not just to add some extra content that may get you to 40 hours of gameplay. And The Last of Us makes characters that just are real. They don't feel fake. They don't feel like they're mythical superheroes that you can't really believe. They are characters that are grounded and have stories that reveal things about them in the main story as it goes along. I mean, you look at Joel and Ellie, two characters who are popular in the PlayStation wheelhouse due to how realistic they are. A lot of people have issues with The Last of Us Part 1's ending, but it's realistic because when a father gains a daughter back, what would they do? Protect them with their entire will. And you see that even in Part 2. It's just, Sony knows how to make AAA experiences that are cinematic and story rich, while Xbox suffers from that. And that's why, if you're not paying attention to the Activision and Microsoft acquisition, Microsoft themselves have said that Sony has the AAA games. They do. I mean, you look at their AAA studios that are making games. Halo was okay. I mean, they just now started making the game great, which is what it should have been at launch. But it's interesting because these games can be so good, but yet Xbox I don't know what they're doing. I'm hoping they fix that because I'm not a Sony. It may seem like I'm a Sony fanboy due to what I'm covering. I love Sony, but I also like the Xbox stuff. I liked Infinite when it came out. It just didn't add any content. But I'm on a tangent. What I want to keep talking about is how these three games, while similar, craft these dynamic stories. I mean, these games convince you that these stories are great. I mean, from a woman who's in the world of big tech creatures wreaking havoc on the world she's grown to love, or a father and a son trying to mourn the death of their mother and wife and figuring out the bigger destiny they're tied into going into their second game. Or even a father realizing he found a second daughter that he lost to replace the one that he lost. And he's reliving all that emotion only to have it almost ripped away from him. And he had to go through that same mourning process, which he wouldn't do it again. While a very selfless choice, a very human choice, which is what Sony is good at doing. They're good at crafting human stories in games that don't feel human. And it's very interesting, because video games as a medium, you play video games to kind of like get away from the world. And it's really interesting to see games that put you in a world that you're like, huh, yeah, I like to think about this and not mindlessly play it. That's why AAA is so hard to get into now, because these games keep bumping the notch up to have great stories. Because story is the number one important thing in a video game, in my opinion. Not gameplay, while it is very important, that's number two. Story is, because you don't have a great story, I mean, how long are you going to play it? You're not going to finish the game, I feel like. So, on all that, I do want to take us back to a year that kind of had some dynamic titles that were very similar in this launch sequence. These games all sound very close. So, here's 2009. PS3's been out for 3 years, coming out 2007, and they're trying to rival with the 360. As if you were around in that time, the 360 was the console to buy. The PlayStation wasn't. PS3 was it had a rocky launch, didn't have the exclusives to match Xbox at the time, because Xbox had Halo. Halo 3 was a big deal. And at that time of the year in 2009, we're getting close to Halo Reach. I mean, they're about to have another big Halo launch. And they had Fable, Gears of War. I mean, these are games that people love. And it's very interesting to see how in today's world, how that's flip-flopped. You look at 2009, 2010, 2011, even 2012, before the PlayStation 4 launch, Xbox is at the top of the world. And it's very interesting to see how that has changed due to the Xbox One release and just the blunders they released in the Xbox One's life cycle. So, I do want to speak about 3 games. First one I'm going to be talking about is Killzone 2. Now, you're wondering, why don't you talk about Killzone 1? Killzone 1 was a PS2 game, and I wanted to talk about the PS3 due to it being my first official console. I played the PS1 and PS2, but I was too young to remember them as much as I remember the PS3. So I wanted to speak on that one. And Killzone 2 was released in this year of 2009. Game was one of many Sony solutions to Halo. You had other games like Mag. Oh, what was the other game? Was it Haze? I think it was Haze. These are Resistance. That was another game series that came out that tried to combat Halo. Of course, didn't work, as we know. Halo kind of killed itself, which there's plenty of videos. I might make one someday. We'll see. Now Killzone series stopped on PS4 with Killzone Shadowfall, which was kind of a mediocre first-person shooter. But this game lives on for the story it told, and its fun gameplay mechanics that you didn't really see in other games like Call of Duty or Halo. And it had great set pieces in a first-person shooter, which is something that would define that genre for the next ever since then. I mean, you look at Call of Duty now. I mean, the set pieces may be a little more grounded, but they're still big. And Killzone 2 really showed Sony that they can make FPS games that are good. They just need the developers who want to do it. And the same with SOCOM. SOCOM was another game series that I feel like Sony could bring back now that would add the realistic shooter as a AAA exclusive to really cover Sony's bases. Especially if Xbox gets Activision. They've really got to step up their game. SOCOM, of course, is a game series that ended on the PS3 with SOCOM 4. Which was not a great game. Really threw away what made SOCOM great. The last great one was probably Confrontation. And I'm speaking about games, you're probably like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. So I'm going to stop there. But like I said, Killzone really showed Sony what they could do with a property and a franchise if they really grew it out and gave it the time to bake. So now I'm going to speak. These next two are personal favorites of mine. The last one being one of my favorite games. But this first game, a little game called Infamous. Now, if you're a PlayStation player, you really probably played Infamous 2. That's probably the one that really got you into it, or you played Second Son on the PlayStation 4. But Infamous 1 was a different and unique game. Now, like I said in the earlier, this list is kind of similar. You had a third-person action-adventure game. But what made it different was you're a superhero. But, again with the but, you had the choice to be a supervillain or a superhero. That was your choice, which I don't think any games really did before that. You had the choice, because before then you had the movie tie-in games, Spider-Man 2, Ultimate Spider-Man. You had these games that were around superheroes, but you never really had a game where you could choose to be a supervillain. So this game really offered a unique dynamic. Now, this game also had a function I wish they would put in Spider-Man 2. If you didn't know, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so if you didn't tell by the channel banner and channel art. And they had this feature where you could dress in civilian clothing and then dress back in your superhero clothes, which is so cool. And I wish they would bring that. It's one of my dreams they put in Spider-Man 2. I think that'd be so cool. Modders, if you want to put it in Spider-Man 1, go ahead. That'd be nice. But yeah, this game had the world of Empire City, which was very different because it was a darker city. It wasn't Spider-Man New York. It wasn't Superheroes Metropolis. It almost kind of was like Batman's Gotham City and Arkham City, in the second Rocksteady game. And it was dark, and you could tell that people were hurting in this world, and you were either the solution or the negative issue to these people as you terrorized them. So Infamous 1, of course they improved on it with Infamous 2 and the DLCs that followed it. And if you haven't played the Infamous games, I recommend you play them. They're super great. They're dated, but they're great games. Or if you just want to play a more modern one, play Second Son. It's got Troy Baker as the lead, of course, because that was the rest of the 2010s era on PS4. It seemed like Troy Baker was in everything, but it's because he's a good voice actor. So yeah, I highly recommend you check that out. So yeah. All right. Last on my list is, like I said, one of my favorite all-time game series, and that's Uncharted 2, Among Thieves. This game came out in 2009 with its predecessor coming out in 2007. And Uncharted 2 was definitely an interesting game because it evolved the clunky shooter mechanics and climbing mechanics that the first one had. It made it more refined and more fun. Of course, it kept the story that is great that we had in all four games. I would love to do a retrospective of those games. I may do in the future when there's a little lull in the games that are coming out. But this game really brought its A game. And of course with the multiplayer, a lot of people don't talk about Uncharted 2's multiplayer, but I think it was a dynamic and unique experience. You had, of course, your normal game modes, Deathmatch and King of the Hill, but you had Plunder, Elimination, and Chain Reaction, which were 3 game modes I don't think you really see in other games. Maybe Splinter Cell, but this game had a fun and unique multiplayer. Now, while the third one's more popular due to it ripping some unique gameplay additions like theater mode, you really didn't have much like Uncharted 2 at the time. And it was very cool to see how that competed with the Xbox due to there not being an Uncharted game. I think Uncharted was one of the first exclusives like Infamous that brought Xbox players over due to the rich story, fun multiplayer, and an all-around great game that kept you wanting more. And then when Uncharted 3 came out, of course, we had the infamous Subway ads. But you really could see how Uncharted 4 blew up due to people playing the game, especially with the Nathan Drake series coming out for PlayStation 4. They remastered the games. And it was very interesting because Uncharted is one of PlayStation's staple series. And you can see that. It's obviously a game series that people love. I personally love. It's one of my favorites. And it's very fun to see the future of what Uncharted may be if they decide to continue it. We'll see. But, that was 2009. 3 games I chose that were a little similar. But the difference between this and modern day AAA titles from Sony is that these games took more risk and were more variant. While they did have great stories to them, they were defined by other means that you don't really see in gaming much more. You never really see Sony making an FPS right now because they have Call of Duty. Now with Activision maybe being bought by Xbox, you might see that change and you might start seeing more FPSs. But I said earlier, and I want to reiterate, there's so many Sony titles they can bring back, like SOCOM. We could have another Jax and Daxter game. I mean, or Sly Cooper. There are games that are very different that they could bring out. Even Twisted Metal. I mean, that's a game that they tried to do again. I think it didn't make as much sales as they wanted. But, I mean, Sony's going to start stepping it up with this whole Activision. Now, it looks like they're kind of winning it right now, but as the days go on, they might not. And so we just really need to, I want to see Sony step it up and go back to the Sony that was really grinded to get above Xbox. Not because, in my opinion, Sony's got too comfortable at where they're at. They're too comfortable. You can tell with the AAA experiences. Yes, they're great games, polished, great stories, great mechanics, but they're not taking risk. They're not making creative games as much as they used to. I mean, it's very interesting to see, honestly, how they've kind of fallen. And I'm hoping Sony really brings it back because, I mean, Xbox, next year, 2023 could knock them out of the park and bring them on top. You never know. And I really hope that, Sony really does try and grab greater exclusive titles from their wheelhouse to bring out, to make as popular as Uncharted, God of War, and, Last of Us. I really hope that they do that because I really think SOCOM could be a AAA selling title that we could see coming out in the next 10 years. I think you could treat it like Call of Duty, where, of course, give it more development time, but will be a popular shooter, but that's third person. That's actually where clans really came from for PlayStation. Before Call of Duty, SOCOM was a pre-Call of Duty game. You saw clan battles there, and it's very interesting to see maybe where that could go. It could be a Rainbow Six Siege competitor, even though it's a different kind of shooter. I would love to see that. And, like I said, that's a game that everyone loved that played it. Why don't you bring it back or remaster them and then make new games? Kind of like what's Resident Evil's doing. They're remastering their older games to bring new audience members and while making new ones like Resident Evil 8. I think Sony needs to take some pages out of other people's books and start making more AAA exclusives because, yeah, they're at top, but I don't think it's going to be so hard to knock them off. If Xbox gets a couple good single player, of course they don't have EA, but EA, they're making a new Mass Effect. What if they get the exclusivity rights? You just never know. Yeah, guys, that's gonna be it for the video. I appreciate you watching, taking time out of your day to sit and hear me ramble about video games. And if you liked the video, why don't you hit that like button? Helps show how you guys feel about the videos, whether they're good, bad, absolutely disturbing to your ears. I appreciate it. And if you really liked the video and you want to see more of my videos from the past, why don't you consider subscribing? It helps me out, helps the channel grow, and yeah, if you really want to know when I'm getting stuff out, you hit that notification bell to have updates about future videos and more. And guys, of course, like I end every video, I want some discussion. Tell me what you thought about the video. Tell me what you thought about the topic I discussed. Am I right or wrong, or you are a little in the middle? Do you see Sony being knocked off from that AAA platform that they are on? Or do you see them being the mighty steed that won't fall due to what they're releasing AAA-wise? Please, and discuss among yourselves. I want to build this community and have a bunch of people that want to speak on video games because at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for. We love video games. But again, thank you all for watching. Hope you guys have a great day or night. Peace.